HCL Integration Platform, or HIP, introduction demo.
When we log in, we will see two different areas. We see a design side where we create our structures, our schemas, and our maps, and we'll see a deploy side. And deploy is where we take the assets that we've created within the development environment and deploy them out to our production environment. For today's call, we're going to focus on the design side, and we're going to go into one of these projects. I've got a pre-existing schema here. What our schemas do, or it's a data definition of our metadata of whether it's the input or the output. In our schema designer, we have our data dictionaries have two ways of describing the data. We have a properties and we have a structure. So I can come over here and in our properties, I can define things as an item, such as a field. That's our base element that we're going to be mapping, or a group. A group is a collection of different items that we're working with, or a group could be a collection of other groups, or a category. And a category is just a way that within our schemas, we are able to separate things and make them a little bit easier to see.
So I have a group here that's defined with these fields in that order. It's defined as a delimited with a comma delimited. And if I change the syntax here, I can see that as 0D, 0A hex. So that is a carriage return line feet at the end of each record.
So that's how we would define a structure from if we were doing that manually. We've got different ways of defining other schemas. We can import XSDs or JSON, or we can import the schema from a database. So we've got a number of different ways to take advantage of the predefined data elements that are available to you and bring that metadata into HIP. And what we're going to do now is look at maps. And if we take a look at this example over here, I've got a pre-built map that I'm moving some data from XML to JSON. The data that I'm moving here looks like this. It's some XML information about some cars, and I've got things like manufacturer, the car name, the year it was built. What I'm missing in here, for example, though, is I don't have insurance information. So what I want to be able to do is look at things like the serial number and then use a second input, which is a cross-reference database in this case. And the database looks like this, where I've got the VIN number and I've got the associated insurance information.
So what I have here in my map is I'm going to take some XML data and be able to read that in. I'm going to be able to have a second input, which is a Informix database. I'm going to create some JSON output, and I'm going to take the data from my JSON output and create some CSV information. If I want to see how some of that information is mapped, I can come over here and I can expand my inputs and my outputs. So for example, I can take manufacturer and drag and drop that over here. I could take model year and drag and drop that over here. Car name, I've already done that, but I've inserted a function in here and I've called that uppercase. So we have a very extensive list of functions that are available to you. The product's been around for over 20 years, so we've pre-built these functions and they're very similar to Excel. So in this case, I'm making the car name in uppercase. I've got a field that I'm moving over the original price. For example, if I look at the property of that, I could see that that is a number, and I'm trying to move that into a text field. So I'm using number to text. And what I'm doing for the lookup is I'm using a function called lookup, and I drag and drop my insurance information in here where my VIN number equals my serial number coming from my XML input. So if I want to be able to build and run that example, I can come over here and say build and run. And what I could see is when the map completes successfully, I can right click on my output and say view data. In this case, it will create the JSON data. My insurance information was not in my XML, so it was added here from the cross-reference lookup from my database. My car name is in uppercase, and I've mapped that XML. Now I can reuse that map or that information that's been created from there, and I create a CSV file. And if I look here, I did another function in there called proper case to be able to take the car name and be able to create the property case of the car name. And that's an example of how we would use the HCL integration platform, or HIP, to be able to map some data from any to any and many to many.